How is everybody doing? And welcome back for another Strength Chat episode. Today, I am joined by a very special guest. He's a physiotherapist and strength coach with over 20 years' experience. He's the creator of the Advanced Movement Therapy certification, and he's also the founder of COMPHYSIO Performance and Wellness. Today, I am joined by the one and only Tom Swales. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. Good that we could get this set up. I suppose the first question is, how are you? What's been happening in your world recently? What have you been up to?
We started our cohort for the AMT certification. So that's the kind of the live coaching side of things. I'm doing more speaking gigs, more keynotes, working at conferences. It's just kind of behind the scenes thing in education from our online platform to educating and leveling up our physios and strength coaches at our clinic in Barrie. And my wife and I were calling it it's a building year, a
Yeah,
rebuilding year, right? We've got clinics running great. We have amazing staff, and now it's just trying to launch this whole other aspect of online digital marketing and education and building trust. And that's just a whole other monster because it's not very tangible. You put all this work and money into something that's virtual.
yeah,
And we opened a second clinic back in August, and you could see, all right, walls are going up. That's where the money's going. Oh, the equipment showed up. That's where the money's going, right? Everything is tangible, and you know when the start date is. It's the grand opening,
yeah, yeah.
and you have the staff. So you're like, okay, the clinic's going to be making money. We just got to do some marketing and get people in the door. And to, looking at that business from a brick and mortar, very, very tangible business to this virtual, I have this course, we have this coaching. It's not a physical product, but there is a ton of value in it to help people make more money by being really good at what they do, or help solve problems. It's tougher because there's so much work that you're doing, and you're like, there's no feedback of, are you moving in the right direction? Are you doing a good job? You treat a client, they get better, the pain's gone, instant gratification, feedback loop. I did a good job. This, you're writing the book, you're doing the PowerPoints, you're writing the presentations, and like, students ask questions. Maybe that's good feedback. And then you check with them. Did you apply it? Yeah, it worked. Okay, great. I got a week delay feedback. But it's just different. I know it's all business, it's servicing people and helping those to solve problems. But yeah, it's harder. It's definitely harder from what we know how to open clinics now. We're good at that. We've got systems in place. We got people. This
Yeah.
is but that's part of growth. That's part of just leveling up and enjoying this life that we have, because we get to experiment and take swings at things that you normally wouldn't think you would have took a swung at, but you can.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well with that, I think because as coaches, as therapists, you used to, like what you said there, you're used to dealing with people in person, so
Yeah.
you get that idea of it. Whereas, I think the online space, whether it be online coaching, online education, is a space that is consistently growing. There's a lot of courses, a lot of seminars, which
Yeah.
I do still think in-person seminars are really really good, but you can reach
Yep.
and help a wider audience. But I think it's interesting what you're saying there about the actual feedback. Do
Yeah.
you know it's actually working, and it's maybe
Mhm.
just a different way of thinking about feedback? Because
Yeah.
I would say, if people are engaging, like that is
Yeah.
good feedback. Because if they weren't engaging, they would probably be like, well, yeah, I don't want to ask questions about this or anything like that. But
Yeah.
um, I did quite a brief introduction at the start, but for
Mhm.
everyone listening who might not know your background in coaching, in education, obviously you've mentioned there, opening some clinics.
Yep.
Um, do you just want to give a little bit of a background to yourself?
Yeah. So, athlete by nature, soccer player. I don't, I'm not your typical goalkeeper size and stature, but I could get to things pretty quickly. And I didn't like to run. So that was the only position for me in soccer. Went to the US on a soccer scholarship, did my AT degree down there, athletic training, came back home, worked for a couple of years, went to the master's program for physical therapy. From there, got a job with the Olympic ski team, traveled for 2 years, working with Olympic athletes as a full-time physio and part-time strength coach. Learned a lot there, found a mentor, worked for him for 3 years, learned about how the body's connected and looking outside the box of the traditional orthopedic paradigm. And my wife, at that time, she we opened a clinic. So she was in real estate, and sorry, I shouldn't have said at that time. She's still my wife. And so she, jumped in feet first with me, found a space, just the two of us, 4,000 square feet. I was the only physio. She was working the front desk and movement coach. And then we just grew it from there. But over the years, going from new grad, not knowing too much, we know what we know in school, but not knowing how to apply it, create a lot of frustration. And then coming out and then taking courses. I'm like, I'm going to take every course I can. Get confidence. You get some wins under your belt, but then you get confused as to, I don't know what worked for this person.
Yeah.
And then 2 decades down the line, you're just like, I don't know if anything works for people because I have 100 courses and certifications on my belt, and I don't know why people are getting better. And it just became a lot of confusion. So I'm going to jump to why I created the AMT certification. It's this culmination of manual therapy, orthopedic assessment, neurological systems, physics, everything that kind of makes up the human being. And I distilled it down into an algorithm. I realized everything in life is an algorithm. Pilots, they run an algorithm. You build a house, there's an algorithm, or you call it a blueprint, or you call it a flight plan. And I started to analyze, well, what do we do as clinicians? Well, we help people. Okay, great. What makes up a person? The first interaction is we're gonna have a conversation. How am I making that person feel? Do they feel safe? Do they trust me? Am I creating that connection? Psychology, because people come in with beliefs. Oh, I can't do that. My doctor said this. I'll never be able to do that. Okay, well, I have to break down these belief systems. Once you get that, then we look at movement. Can you move? How do you move as a system? Can you touch your toes? Can you back bend? Can you stand on one leg? Can you squat? Right. That's our feedback loop, because that's controlled by the nervous system. So that's neurology. And then you start looking at, well, how does tissues heal? Well, the cells, they proliferate and scar tissue comes. Okay, that's biology. And then you look at breathing and nutrition. That's chemistry. And then you look at, how do we move? How do injuries occur? It's a physics problem. So you start looking at these older disciplines, and then you start to kind of I created this roadmap of how to assess somebody in a very sequential sequence to get me to that root cause faster. Because before I had all this knowledge, all these different concepts, and I'm like, okay, well, today I'm going to use this concept, and hopefully I get lucky. It was too inconsistent. It was too confusing. And what I realized is, once I'm consistent on the front end with my assessment, and I can go through and check all my boxes and not assume anything doesn't have anything to do with anything else, I started to realize, I'm like, oh, this neck issue is actually your left lower back, or this shoulder issue is actually your right hip, right? Like, you start to make those connections. And once you start making those connections, all of a sudden people start moving better, and their pain goes away faster than before. So that made me realize, I'm like, okay, I need to be able to take this in my brain, this algorithm that I go through, and teach it to other people. And it's not teaching people how to treat differently. It's just to look at the body in a different way, but still use all your tools. You just learn how to plug them in and know when to utilize them at the right time. Is this a manual therapy problem, or is this a movement problem? Right? And if it's a manual therapy, manip it, mob it, stretch it, needle it. Is it a movement problem? Reflexes, breathing, motor patterning, load it up, right? So you can start to categorize and just kind of shift people into whatever they need. And it made it more fun, because once I started getting those results, I started getting a lot of very cool athletes. All of a sudden, your reputation goes up as the guy. And, like, I've been fortunate. I've had lots of NHL players, professional skiers, and even World's Strongest Man. He reached out to me. He's like, I heard I need to see you. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. What can I do for you? And, somebody like that at an elite level, when you look at his body and his nervous system, he responds so quickly. Changes happen immediately, because he's like, I got pain on the right side of my body. When I squat, I'm shifting. I'm like, okay, well, you can't stand on your left leg. Your eyes don't track to the left, and your neck is jammed. So we correct those little, rehab exercises. And the next day he texts me, "Hey, I just PR'd my back squat for 4 reps, no pain." I said, "Amazing."
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's just an example of how quickly I use a rehab exercise on a very high performer, and it calibrated his nervous system and reorganized his body to perform differently. And that's all I did for the first session. Right. And then you tweak stuff and all right, body's reorganized different way. We got to, the algorithm's telling us to go over here now. And then you have an 85-year-old lady who doesn't want to go to the other physio clinics because that's for old people. I want to come here. All right, well, what do we want to work on? I want to improve my balance. I want to have faster feet, and I want to improve my posture. Cool. You're going to do deadlifts with a kettlebell. You're going to go on the agility ladder, and you're going to walk on a balance beam, right? 3 performance exercises, but fixes and corrects what her needs are. So it's super fun because when you go through the algorithm, you find out exactly what the individual needs, not assume, oh, you're a high-end athlete, you need high-end performance exercises. No, you don't. You're already performing at the highest in the world. What am I going to do? I just need to make sure you don't explode from doing those things. I just need to calibrate you. The elderly lady, oh, you're just super deconditioned. We're a little weak on the backside, and we got to improve balance and leg strength. You're getting deadlifts, squats, and beam walks, right? Like, let's look at what they need. But it makes it fun because everyone's on a spectrum. It's not performance and rehab. It depends on what the individual needs. And once you see where they fall on that spectrum, you can give them exactly what they want and get those fast results. So that was a kind of a long-winded story to kind of lead into where we go and what we do now from where I started.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that, you said there about the qualifications that you've done, the experience that you've had, but I think from there it's kind of looking at the bigger picture, like what you were saying. It might not be that one area in your neck, for example. It might be something in your left hip, and just knowing what's right for that person. Because I really like the idea of everybody's on a spectrum or a level, and it's kind of that thing of, I can't remember the full quote, but every human is an athlete, every athlete is a human, and just knowing what's going to be applicable to that, and that kind of goes into the first couple of topics that I had in mind for this of. When you're talking about people's movement, and whether that be the world's strongest man, or that 85-year-old woman coming in, body awareness gets spoken about quite a lot. And sometimes, and I'm sure you've had this, is that you've had some people come in who are like super aware of what feels good, what doesn't feel good.
Sure.
But then you've got other people who, you ask them to do a movement, and they're so far away from what you've asked them to do. It's a little bit like, all right, well, how do I fix that? Though I suppose the first question is, what to you is body awareness, or good body awareness? And also, why do some people struggle with it, in terms of, if you ask them to do a squat and they're just quite clunky and out of sync, what does that all kind of mean to you, and why do people struggle with that?
Yeah, so it can be many reasons. It could be a lack of sensory input, meaning, so if they're squatting, maybe they don't feel their feet the same. Maybe that kinetic chain from foot to hip, they can't feel their glutes when they squat, which is very common because people sit, they stretch out the glutes, they lose awareness, and they just use quads all day. Makes sense, right? So the brain might not be able to find or feel certain muscles to perform the movement. So the body and then the motor system is just going to perform the movement the best way it knows how. So it might be just kind of this, we'll call it muscle amnesia, right? Brain can't feel the muscles, therefore it can't find them. And if it can't find them, it cannot fire them. So it's just going to use what it can feel. And the typical muscles that people feel all the time, I feel quads in my low back with squatting. They don't feel glutes. Okay. So what do we have to do to make that person feel their glutes? We might need to isolate them. Okay, cool. Maybe we just need to do some glute exercises local to make them squat better. But I think people, they try and complicate, or they look at more complicated movements and think that they need to feel those. I just look at baseline stuff. Can you bring your chin to your chest? Yes or no, right? We're not measuring anything. It's a straight yes or no. And do you have any pinch, pull, or pain on the back of your neck? Yes or no. Can you look up towards the ceiling? without any pinchiness or pulling the front? Yes or no? Can you bring your chin here? Yes or no? Can you touch your toes? Can you back bend 3 steps away from the wall? Can you rotate? Can you stand on one leg? If you have a no to any of those questions, we have to start wondering why. Now we got to know, okay, we can't rotate to the left. Is it our rib cage? Is it the hips? All right, well, let's just sit down and oh, no, my T-spine rotates fine. And then all of a sudden I open them. Oh, my hip doesn't open. We need to work on that left hip to improve left rotation. Because if I do not rotate through my hip, guess where I might rotate into? My low back or my knee. Guess what? Don't rotate. Low back and knee. Where do people often have pain? Low backs and knees, right? So having some kind of fundamental movement screen, a baseline of minimum human movement standards is very helpful because you don't have to sit there and measure with a goniometer. It's can you do this? Yes or no. And does it feel different on one side or the other? That's the easiest way I can get people to be more self-aware. Because if it feels the same and it looks the same, no problem. Move on. Not a problem there. Can you stand? My favorite test, single leg balance, because that is a very quick feedback loop. Can you stand on one leg with your eyes closed for 10 seconds? Yes or no? If you can't do it, let's figure out why. Is it a foot problem? Is it an ankle, knee, hip, core, trunk control, inner ear? And there's lots of things we can do to figure out where the balance problem is coming from. And when we find that right area and we apply the inputs and we calibrate the nervous system, all of a sudden, oh, single leg balance gets better, right? So I created a tool called the self-awareness movement scan for my athletes because they would come in, when I was working with them full time, they're coming in 5 days a week. They would do their blood pressure, grip strength, check their heart rate, fill out a little score sheet on how they feel psychologically. And then they would SAM scan themselves because they don't need me to sit there and look at their movement. They can do it. I said, I'm not going to be with you for 9 months of the year. So how good would it be if you had a tool in which you don't need to run to the therapist, run to the trainer? This feels tight. Can you help me? No, you can help yourself. And then they would go through it. They'd figure out the problems. They would use the corrective exercises, go back, check. Good. Yep. Let's train. Yeah. Right. So to answer your question, it's, the research tells us that the biggest predictor of an injury is an old injury. And I agree, especially to that previously injured area, because it's never the same. It's got scar tissue, maybe decreased circulation, the joints, the mechanics, the anatomy's changed. But I see the greatest predictor of a new injury is a lack of self-awareness. People just aren't realizing some of the repetitive patterns or postures that they're taking, and they end up overloading certain tissues. And then over time, all of a sudden, I just bent over and twisted and I hurt my back. Well, it wasn't that one movement. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. And that was the last straw that your nervous system said, nope, I need you to pay attention to me now because you're not being self-aware. So I'm going to now make you pay attention to me and become a little more self-aware with pain and discomfort. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So I would rather people not get to that point and just check in with how you're moving with basic movements. Yeah. And if the basic movements are good, great. Go do your general warm-up. Now go work out. But if they're a little bit off, right? If there's asymmetry in the body, the nervous system doesn't deal with that very well, right? You bend forward and you feel tightness in your left hamstring more than your right. Well, you go load that with a kettlebell swing or a deadlift. That's going to cause torque in your pelvis and you're going to twist through your back when you do that enough times, and all of a sudden something goes.
Yeah.
Now, had you pay attention to that tightness and fix that symmetry, maybe you wouldn't have tweaked the low back.
Yeah, I think from there, everything that you've said, it's kind of the body's a pretty smart thing, and it'll send you alarms or notifications or reminders just to be like, look, we're gonna let you know about this until again another phrase. It's like a smoke alarm. So there's going to be a fire. There's a fire somewhere, but you want to make sure that you're keeping on top of that before it actually becomes anything more serious. And
yeah, don't take the batteries out of your smoke alarm just because it's going off.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think with that as well, when you're saying about having a baseline, do you think? And again, what you said there, nothing overly complicated. Do you think sometimes maybe from a therapist point of view that they're looking for because you can. human movement can be as complex as you want to
Oh yeah.
make it,
Yep.
like what you touched on there. Do you think that from a therapist point of view that sometimes they're looking to make it more complex rather than just looking at the fundamentals or having a baseline to work off, which then leads to people maybe getting more worried about their movement or getting confused about actually what they need to be doing, which then stops them progressing, if that makes sense?
Yes. So a good example of this is your running analysis, right? Everyone take video. How are you running? Oh, you see how you're doing this little heel whip or this Trendelenburg, or you're rotating, or you're doing all these weird things. Running is very complicated. Running is the pinnacle of human movement because we are the only species who can do that because we have this advanced vestibular system and proprioceptive system, and we can hold ourselves upright. Now, to try and analyze running, even in slow motion, and try and diagnose why someone's doing what they're doing is dumb because running is the end result. And regardless of what we feel in our body's going to do it the best way it knows how. If there's old injuries, if there's pain, that's why we limp, right? We can still walk and we can still hobble because we still need to escape things if we need to. So the body's going to compensate for a very short period of time. But if we leave those small compensations, well, now we're going to get the overuse injuries. For running, when I teach running, we look at running as, okay, you're running this way. We're going to video this, but then we're going to do some stuff and we're going to video to see what's changed. Because I don't want to sit there and coach someone, oh, you know what? That right glute's not firing up. You should probably think about that glute squeezing. And then every single step, they're trying to consciously contract that glute. That doesn't make any sense. They're going to over contract it. It's going to be poor and they're going to gas out because they should be just running and breathing. So when I look at my runners, I look at single leg balance. Can you stand on one leg? Yes or no? And if you can't, I bet running's not going too good for you because if you can't stand statically on one leg, how do you think 2 to 4 times body weight going through that leg thousands of times is going? Probably not too good. And then look at half kneeling, and then look at a bridge, and then look at a shoulder touch and a tripod to look at the core. Then look at rolling strategy. Oh, you can't roll to the left. Well, rolling when we run, you're spiraling and you're leaning towards that leg. So if your core isn't lining up or you're not driving off the glutes or whatever, you're going to land a little differently on one side than the other. So maybe we clean that up, go back up through that sequence and see what else needs to be fixed, and then go run again. Maybe we do some kettlebell swings to get your glutes firing up in the sequencing in the core, and then go run, and then watch how changes happen. I didn't coach them to run better. I just applied new motor patterns that we learned as babies that we needed to have as a prerequisite in order to run. But if those old programs down below are not working, how's that advanced program going? Probably not so good. So this is an example of therapists and coaches can often overcomplicate things because they're trying to analyze these very complex throwing, running, striking. And they're like, oh, see how you're doing that there? Okay, great. Those are very sport specific things. How is the human athlete doing first before the specialized? The human athlete needs to have these very fundamental patterns in place in order to do the specialized advanced stuff. If the fundamentals are not in place, the advanced stuff is going to be really difficult or might start causing problems in the body. So I separate the human athlete and the specialized athlete. My athletes come in beginning of the season, they're doing a lot of fundamentals because they rotate towards one side. They are hand dominant. So they're going to naturally create imbalances from their sport because they do that thousands and thousands of repetitions throughout the season. If they're coming in all rotated and imbalanced, and then I'm having them do deadlifts or kettlebell swings or squats, well, now they're loading up in that rotation. That's going to cause a problem. They might get hurt because I'm loading them improperly. But if I balance them out and correct the human athlete first and get them into a degree of symmetry, well, now it's safe to load those patterns. The nervous system will feel safer and it will take the brakes off and it'll allow more weight to go on the bar. It will allow them to run faster. But again, if we keep feeding into those imbalances from the specialized athlete, we're going to cause a bigger problem, overuse injuries, anything else down the road.
Yeah, I think as you were speaking there, it kind of, especially from, so I worked as a strength conditioning coach with
Mm-hmm.
Bradford Bulls and Leeds Rugby back in the UK,
Cool.
and a lot of that was with like kind of like the scholarship and academy. So that was
Yep.
kids anywhere from kind of like 13 up to like 18, 19.
Yep.
And one of the coaches that I worked with explained it as, and there's quite a lot of different explanations of this, but having it as the base pyramid is
Yep.
just foundation movement. What can you do? And then
Yeah.
just building it up from there until you get a little bit more specific. And I
Yep.
think from that, every athlete has started at that point. Oh well, they have all started at that point to then get a little bit more specialized.
Yep.
And if
Yep.
you just focus on that, sometimes the base of the pyramid is going to start crumbling a little bit because
Yeah.
then they're gonna struggle to be able to do
Yep.
the specific side of things.
Yep.
So then
And the
that kind
nervous
of leads.
system.
Sorry,
Yep.
go on.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that kind of leads to, when you're looking to improve these fundamentals or just improve movement quality as a whole, whether that be from people doing their warm-ups or from what are you included in their program or
Mhm.
changing the variation of their movements? What's kind of the plan beyond that assessment, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So when you realize the nature of the nervous system, it's a brake system. Its primary job is survival, avoid pain, look for safety. And coming back to your performance pyramid, having the fundamentals of mobility, strength, balance, control at the bottom, right? And then you start building strength, power, speed, skill, right? If, like you said, you start to focus too much on the speed and the skill and the power up top, the foundation of mobility, balance, control, and strength can start to crumble. And the nervous system will sense that. The structure, which is your foundation in the anatomy, if you start to get overuse or underuse or disuse or misuse in the body, the nervous system is constantly scanning for threats internally and externally. And if it starts to sense threats of damage to the body, it will put the brakes on and dampen performance. It will dampen speed. It will dampen power. Now all of a sudden the athlete's struggling, like, I can't get faster. I'm throwing less. Like, things don't feel right. Okay. Well, because we spent so much time up here, look, your straight leg raise sucks. You've got nerve compression, right? Your core isn't firing up the same on right side, left side. We have to go back down to that foundation, those fundamentals, to rebuild that, make sure the foundation solid. And then all of a sudden, speed goes up, skill goes up, power goes up. Well, we didn't train those, but the nervous system said, oh, the foundation's set again. I can take the brakes off. So now we can hit that next level. All the greats, Kobe Bryant just preached the fundamentals. Fundamentals, fundamentals. That's the greatest ones. They just work on the fundamentals. Like, they're warming up, fundamentals, right? Throw a little bit of trick shots or anything there, keep it fun, keep the variety going so the brain starts to wake up. But they're all about the fundamentals. And you just pepper in some of those skills and they build on top of that. But when I'm warming up my athletes, so once they're moving good, I like to build their warm up. I like to start activating the nervous system, how we learn to move as babies from the ground up. So they all get on the ground. They're doing some spinal rocking, which is mobilizing the thoracic spine. It's stimulating the vestibular apparatus. It's activating their core. They do some rolling, side to side, hard rolls, soft rolls, hollow rolls, activate the slings, get the other part of your vestibular apparatus going. Then they start getting them to glute bridges, side planks, crawling, right? They're suspending the spine, getting those muscles around the hips and the core to start firing up first. Then they start transitioning into kneeling, into some hip transitions, into some walking and some lunging, skipping and whatnot. So it takes 5 minutes. It's 5 minute warm up. And you're literally activating. And the cool thing when you do ground stuff, you can start to detect, ooh, this side feels a little tighter. Okay, well, let's spend a little more time over here and breathe into that. Next repetition, you come to it. Oh, it's loosened up. Great. Okay. Now let's start continuing building these movement patterns from the ground up, from spines supported, suspended, stacked. And then once we're all firing up in the midsection, well, all the limbs start to feel loose because the nervous system's like, oh, center's protected. Great. I'm going to take the brakes off the hamstrings and the quads and hip flexors because I don't need those anymore to try and protect my center.
Yeah.
Because your nervous system cares more about everything in the middle than it cares about anything in the periphery. Because this is what we learn to strengthen first. Babies spend a year plus on the ground doing all these things because the nervous system's trying to organize strength from the center out. And then once it's like, oh, you have enough strength here. All right, now we're going to come up into standing. And then, oh, baby's not ready, goes back down, right? But we're already bipedal. We can cheat and hide stuff. But just getting your athlete on the ground for 5 minutes before you start doing your A skips, B skips, accelerations, decelerations, cuts, they're going to feel so much lighter simply because we organize the nervous system literally how we developed it. So by warming it up in the same sequence, it's like rebooting your computer from the original software and then start building everything on top. And there's no lag because you're not trying to start from this advanced thing here and the system's bogged down from a bunch of spam or some caches in the background bugging stuff up.
Yeah. And do you think, because everything that you've said there, and again, I find this really interesting that, when you talk about movement, when you talk about, getting people or increasing quality of movement, there's nothing that we've spoken about there which is overly complicated, that we're trying to make
Yep.
people do something that they can't do. It's kind of, yeah, not to repeat it again, but back to the fundamentals of what
Yep.
most people can start off doing. Do you think
Yep.
that that's where you get more buy-in from, just the Gen Pop client coming in or the athlete coming in, rather than being like, right, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, which is maybe a little bit too challenging.
Sure.
But where my head went from there as well is for your warm up, what I thought was good that you touched on was, we might add in some more fun bits, some more complicated bits just to keep it interesting. But is
Yep.
that way you can actually progress the warm up, rather than thinking that if we're doing
Yep.
this really complex, challenging workout, that the warm up has to be that, as opposed
Yep.
to having that fundamental movement warm up, which is only going to benefit the more complicated workout. If that kind of makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah. So we can get as creative as we want on the ground, right? Once you've gone through the ground up, it changes each time. If I'm taking them through it, I'm going to change it up because I'm going to get bored. But the fundamentals are still there. It's still going after all the planes of movement, the nervous system, top down, center out. And over time, when your client has gone through it or your athlete's gone through it enough, they're going to figure out which ones they feel the best doing. They're going to figure out which ones make them the loosest and moving as fast as possible. And when we're working with clients, the goal is to not beat the crap out of them and make them feel shitty. I mean, you can do that, and people are like, oh, I got my money's worth. But coming back to the nervous system, if they can't walk for 5 days or they can't lift their arms and be functional in the real world because they need to function, their nervous system will find every reason not to do that again because that was pain, that was a threat. And we can try and convince ourselves, for a short period of time, oh, this is good for me, this is good for me. But you do that enough times, and eventually your subconscious will take over and be like, no, I'm not doing that today.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I just don't feel like doing it. No, it's because you're in pain all the time. If I can get people, I do a baseline of movement, all of a sudden they're moving better than they've ever have just from a 5 minute warm up. Already they're like, I feel amazing. Great. Let's do more. Because if I can make them feel good, what are they going to want to do more of? The good stuff.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Now we're going to slowly build up these patterns. They're going to feel worked, but they're not going to feel crushed. And they're always going to feel like I can do more. Exactly. You're going to carry that feeling till tomorrow because then you're going to show up again. But if I crush you and I don't make it feel good, you're not going to want to show up tomorrow. You're going to drudge it. So make people feel good, make them feel worked. But that is where you can build that momentum and that motivation to show up each and every single day to get that good feeling, feel good, move good, and then you can build more volume over time. Because if I hurt them and they got to take a week off, well, the person who trains 5 days that week versus the one is going to be 5 times further ahead
Yeah.
because they got the volume, they got the practice, and they're building. They're not destroying. And this is where, some of the art and the science comes in, knowing your clients, what can they manage? Where do I need to start them with? But I always tell people, look, if you're not sure, start on the ground. What can we do there? Let's just get some core work done. Let's get some glute bridges, get some activation. Let's open up the shoulders. What can we do there? And then slowly start to build up.
Yeah.
It's never a wrong answer to start from the ground because that's where we learn how to move in the first place. And it's the safest because, especially with the elderly, what do they fear the most? Falling. Well, if I build your relationship with the ground, you're not going to be scared of the ground if you happen to end up there because you're going to know how to collapse your body and absorb forces through your body because you have a relationship with it.
Yeah.
So for lots of populations, start them on the ground, see how they organize, see how they feel. Oh, things feel better and looser. Great. Let's load that up. Let's go pick some stuff up. Let's carry some stuff. Let's hang off stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with that as well, interesting that you said there about as older people, the biggest fear is falling. That's why, strength training as we get older is really important. And I think as well, I actually had a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago with another coach about running, jumping, all these movements, or I think he described it as like adult PE. So doing all those things that you would do as a kid, which is, you do loads of different movements. Whereas sometimes, as an adult, if you maybe don't keep up with training or sport or anything like that, you can be locked in a chair from 9 till 5, 5 days a
Yep.
week, and then sitting on the sofa on the weekend. Is that adding in some element of power or rotation or whatever movement it is, but it doesn't have to be anything complex. And
Nope.
maybe a little bit of a tangent, but when you were describing the different parts that you're looking at in terms of injury or movement,
Mhm.
part of that is like the psychological element of that. And do you think, because yes, there's the biomechanics, there's the physiology of how the body moves, which is kind of this is fact, but also
Mhm.
you've got to, like what we've touched on throughout this chat, of getting to know that person in front of you. Do you think the psychological element plays as much of an important role as kind of the biomechanics and the nuts and bolts of it? So how much to push this person, how much to pull back a little bit, or even just saying, look, actually you can do this. Like, it's it's maybe their mindset that's holding them back, if that makes sense.
The psychological component is probably the most important, which is why it's the first barrier, the first one we need to challenge with people. Having that conversation, building the trust, showing them the plan, creating the results, right? And people come in with beliefs thinking they can't do certain things. We look at how they move and I'm like, I disagree. And then you get them and you show them that they can do it. And then that belief is broken. You have the other individuals where, look, this is a new surgery. Yes, you feel good, but I need you to hold back because you will disrupt the scar tissue if you do too much. So it's always, the psychology is always the greatest barrier for most people because they're not confident with a plan. They don't know what to do. They're afraid they might hurt themselves because they've hurt themselves in the past, probably because they were doing it wrong or they had bad coaching. So yeah, we're constantly battling through all that. But then also, as you get to know your clients, you're going to know which ones you can push a few more repetitions. You're going to know which ones you can push a little bit harder and when to back off, right? That's where the art comes in, but that's where the personalization also comes in. You can put a plan on paper, be like, we're doing 4 sets of 7 reps for, whatever. But if they're struggling on that third set at that weight, are we going to keep putting that same weight on? Probably not. Like their nervous system might be getting tired. So they're successful. Let's take some of the weight off, or let's just drop the reps, right? So what we put on paper is not set in stone, but it has to be adaptable. And what if your client comes in that day and you had a very high volume, or not a high volume, but a high intense day where we're gonna do some complex things, and they're crushed. They had 6 hours sleep. They're not eating right. They're stressed at work. Blood pressure and heart rate are super high. Are we going to crush them with a high intensity? Probably not, because they're at high risk of injury. Great. Well, we're kind of in a red zone today. We're going to do just ground stuff. We need to down regulate your nervous system. We got to focus on your sleep, nutrition. We're not going to push it today. Yes, the paper says this, but your body is saying this. So we're still going to get work done, but it's going to be ground stuff. It's going to do breath work. We're going to do mobility. We're going to do some balance. Maybe we do a little bit of core stuff on the Swiss ball. They get off. They're like, thank you. I have so much more energy now. Great. I'll see you tomorrow. And then we'll do the plan that we're going to do today. So we have to be adaptable. We can't just, well, this is what the paper says.
Mm.
And knowing what the person needs in that day, but also what their goal is, what's the time frame, you know, how much can you push them? That's in the psychological component, but that's also it's the psychology of knowing the person that you're working with, right?
Yeah.
And building that trust and relationship, because they're going to trust you that when you say two more, that they're not going to get hurt,
Yeah.
right? So that's the psychology component.
Yeah, I think that the last little bit that you said there about, building trust, and I think, there's yeah, maybe vulnerability is the right word of when someone's coming to you, they're coming for help. It's a little bit similar to, I've used the analogy in the past of when you're going to get your car fixed or going to the doctors because you've not been feeling very well.
Yep.
There's an element of trust there that if you ask that expert for help, that they're going to be able to give you it. And
Yep.
I think that's where sometimes, yes, there's plans out there. Yes, you can write everything down and be like, right, this is how they're going to progress session by session, week by week,
Sure.
month by month. But
Yep.
ultimately, that plan is going to be dictated by how that how that client is responding to the training,
Yep.
how they feel with it, and it might be a case of that plan needs to be adjusted or adapted. Whereas I think sometimes, and this is from clients that I've worked with, it's a case of like, right, we're gonna get you, I don't know, we're gonna get you fixed in 6 weeks, and it's a
Yeah.
case of sometimes it's trying to like force that success as opposed
Yeah.
to, like with everything, I think patience is a very underrated quality to have,
Yeah.
of like, look, yes, there's times when we can push, but we're not going to set a dedicated time frame and be like, we're going to get you fixed in this point,
Yeah.
because then you might end up pushing a little bit too much. Do you kind of agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, it's getting people to understand that this is a long game. Like the game is to keep playing the game,
Mm.
not, hey, I mean, athletes are different because you have to periodize, you got to get them prepared and peaked at the right times of the season so they can perform their best. That's different, right? High performance and longevity, they're two different ends, right? Peak performers, they're always pushing the limits. They're always on the brink of getting sick, getting injured, overtraining. But that's what their job is. But it doesn't mean that's not a plan for longevity. Longevity is, can I keep doing these push-ups and these squats and these deadlifts and climb my stairs and play with my kids till I'm 90 and
Yeah,
not be in pain or not rely on external devices? That's the game. But when people come in like, oh, I want to get jacked for summer, and I'm like, you can do that, but just know there's a cost to it.
mhm,
And the cost is you're gonna feel like crap. You're not gonna have a lot of energy. Your libido is gonna go down. You're gonna look good, but there's a cost to that. And then after the summer, what then?
yeah,
You go out, you have a good time, you're eating out, it comes back.
yeah,
Wouldn't you rather we slowly build your body up to adapt, to build the muscle, to improve metabolism over time? Don't crush your hormonal systems because you need that. So that even if you're in summer, you're still looking better than today, but you can still enjoy life.
yeah,
And then even in summer, you're still getting gains. Yeah, it might have pushed us into October, but now you look good for the winter, and now you're still looking good for next year and the next year after that. So people it's a society of impatience. They want quick gains to look a certain way. Everyone thinks they're a high performer that have a timeline in which they need to peak for something, and that's just not realistic. And it's setting those expectations with your clients of like, we can do that, but you're not going to love life,
yeah,
right? And what's the point of this? You're supposed to enjoy life.
yeah, absolutely.
So you can look good, just you'll get there. It's going to take a lot more time, but I would rather you look good and feel good over the long term rather than look good, feel shitty for the short term.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and especially, myself competing, coaching in powerlifting, and the what we talk about is, I mean, don't get me wrong, in powerlifting, you can still compete as a masters, which I think is really, really cool. But I
Yeah.
also think about, and it's actually more so the younger athletes in powerlifting
Yep.
is a case of like powerlifting's always gonna be there. So
Yep.
like it's not all of a sudden if you leave powerlifting, leave the sport of powerlifting, don't
Mhm.
renew your membership, it's a case of, yep, that's it, you're out of the club now. Whereas, you can walk away from powerlifting a little bit. I did that myself, just work
Sure.
on improving fitness in terms of
Yep.
dropping weight, in terms of improving mobility, not feeling as stiff.
Yep.
And focusing on the human element of it, because then you can always go back to it, because you even go to the elite level, if you like, the world's strongest man that you mentioned,
Yeah.
that's only got a limited amount of time when you're
Yeah.
talking about life as a whole. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like, what is life like after that,
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
chatting with rugby players, boxers. It's kind of that thing of, you need to be able to function after that, which I think
Yep.
is, there'll be people listening here being like, that's so far away, that's such a time frame away. Whereas actually sometimes, I always think of it as, it's a little bit like having savings for when you retire, or having a pension. At some point, you
Yep.
need something to fall back on. Whereas if you're just focusing on right now,
Yep.
that can maybe have a detrimental effect in the future. Um, Quite a lot of topics and information shared in there. I thought that was really good information on body awareness and movement quality, because I think sometimes, yeah, for people who maybe struggle with it a little bit, think, well, how am I ever going to improve? Whereas I think we've given him some help with there. But the last question that I like to ask Tom is, from everything that we've chatted about there, and for everyone listening, what would be your take home points or words of wisdom?
So I like this one quote, and I've used it a few times. Is the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Yeah.
And this is speaking to, rather than put off, oh, I'll start in the new year, or I'll start after Christmas, or I'll start whenever. Just do something today.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to be, you don't have to go to the gym. Start on the floor, right? You're stiff, but you want to stretch. Do you watch TV? Yeah, I watch TV before bed. Great. Sit on the floor. Sit whatever position you want. And then when your body says this is uncomfortable, change position. Because it's going to force you to fix your posture. It's going to force your hips to open up. It's going to stretch your hamstrings. Yeah, it might be a little uncomfortable, but you can't get your legs out. Lean back. That's fine. You feel a little stretch. Now you're opening up your shoulders. Start somewhere to start making you feel good, to start pushing, creating that momentum. The hardest part is going from 0.001 then to one, because it's that initial momentum that we can't, that a lot of people struggle with. And then once they get that initial momentum, it's easier to maintain it. And it doesn't have to be long, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? Oh, tomorrow, you know what? I felt really good. I've got more energy and time today. Great. Do 10 push-ups, or do one push-up every hour, something. Go for a walk. Don't care. But as long as you're doing a little bit more every single day, and you're starting today and doing that consistency, I mean, that's key to longevity and overall health.
Yeah, definitely. And as well, it goes back to what you said a little bit earlier about that momentum. You can't
Mm.
create momentum if you don't start. Then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, it's like a snowball effect. You end up
Yeah.
you end up building from there.
Yeah.
Um, and over time, that gravity that builds up pace, which I think sometimes people forget.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Tom, for taking the time to jump on today. Like I say, I thought there was some really, really good information and content in there. But for everyone listening, whether it be Gen Pop clients, athletes, or coaches and therapists listening, if they've got any questions about what we've chatted about today, where could people find you, reach out to you, or see the content and information that you put out there?
So all my free stuff, Instagram, swales.tom, YouTube, I've got longer format videos there on how to self-correct stuff. That's just Tommy Swales. LinkedIn, Tom Swales, same with Facebook. And then for your coaches and your clinicians who want to level up with their practices, the amtcertified.ca. That's where you find the advanced movement therapist certification, SAM scan, and a couple other programs in there as well for high performance.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Tom, for taking the time to jump on the podcast. Thanks a lot to everyone listening, and I will see you all next week.